Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Soundiron Podcast. I am your host, Craig Peters. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking with composer Dan Marocco. You probably heard his stuff if you watch shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or if you've seen the movie Boys of Abu Graib. He's also done some horror stuff like Demonic, which are some of the projects that he's done that we're going to talk about today. He's going to tell us what it was like to assist for composers like Alexandre Desplat and Javier Navarrete. He's going to tell us the story for how he became the composer for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and a whole lot more, so stick around. Well, Dan, I want to thank you for coming on to the Soundiron Podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time out to, sit and chat. And I really wanted to talk with you because you have such a diverse catalog of things that you've worked on. I thought it'd be cool to sort of see a little bit of your approach into how you get started within different projects.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I was doing a little bit of research on you, and I saw something that I thought was really interesting, is that it says that you were born in Texas, you were raised in Osaka, Japan, and now you live in LA, scoring to picture. Tell me a little bit about how you ended up here and sort of how that whole thing happened.
Well, my dad is actually a music teacher. He taught, high school marching band and symphony band in Texas for like 25 years while I was young and growing up, and then got an opportunity to teach in an international school in Osaka. So we moved to Japan, and then I graduated high school in Japan at the international school there, and then came back to the States for college and went to NYU and did music business there. Which I thought I wanted to do like A&R or something like that at a record label. But I got a internship and a job at a company doing music for commercials and really enjoyed writing music more than just talking about music. Or I always enjoyed the idea of the studio, but never really had a chance to get in and sit down and use one. So for me, it really started with the studio part of it, like getting in and messing with the computers and the equipment and everything like that, and then also working to picture. So because I had never really played in like rock bands or anything. I played trumpet in a high school band, that kind of thing. But I definitely came at it initially from like writing, producing more than sitting around with a bunch of guys trying to write a song. So, and for me, it's always been real helpful to have a picture to kind of inspire whatever it is that I'm going to be writing about.
Yeah.
So after doing mainly commercials in New York for several years, and after I graduated NYU, it seems like for music to picture, LA is the place to be. So I moved out here and tried to get into some film work and some TV stuff. So, I love it out here. It's great.
That's cool. Yeah. It's funny how the studio bug kind of bites people sometimes. Like even if I think if you're just into music in general, whether you're playing in bands or high school band or anything.
Yeah.
How because I kind of come from the band background.
Yeah.
But I found when we first recorded in a, I guess like a legit actual studio, whatever you'd call it. And I loved being around it.
Yeah.
And, when you first start playing an instrument, you never really think like, oh, I want to, eventually build a studio or start recording, or, you just like either, writing music or playing someone else's. But it's funny how sometimes it just kind of gets people.
Yeah, definitely. To me, I'm not a performer. I'm about the last person who should be up on stage with people's eyeballs on them. Like I want no part of that. Like that's just not who I am. So for me, the studio is like, this is great. This is perfect. And I have, I tend to be a little bit of a control freak and perfectionist on things. So it's like I have infinite control of the music here, and how crazy things could go on stage is not at all appealing to me, but
yeah. Well, same can kind of go bad for in the studio too. Like when you're trying to get creative or work on something, and all of a sudden your computer shuts off or some kind of
Yeah.
power surge or something, the hard drive dies on you, and then it's like you always have those kind of issues.
Yeah, I will say as frustrating as those are, the few times where I've just completely lost a cue or something I've been on for hours or so, it's like the second time around, it's usually better. Like I know what I liked about it, and I don't have to repeat the mistakes that I kept trying to fix the first time around.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
as frustrating it is, and I have to run out of the studio and scream for a minute and come back in, and it's like, okay, I can do this. I can do it better, and I'll just make it work quickly. So
if you can make that switch mentally, you're good.
Yeah.
I think that's always the thing. It's like, will you overcome or will you just kind of fall apart because you're the pressure? Like, okay, I had 2 weeks to get this done. Now it died on me the day before. Now I have 24 hours to get it done.
Yeah,
and if you can get past that, then you're a pro.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy the pressure to make something cool happen. That's a little too much, I think. It'd be better if I could make the magic happen without the pressure, but
just always do everything before the deadline, like the day right before, and you'll write your best stuff.
Yeah, at least you'll write it quickly.
Yeah. So, Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
Got canceled.
Yeah, that was a rough day.
How bummed were you when that happened?
It was kind of in my mind going into the 5th season, we were kind of 50-50, and as the season wore on and the ratings and stuff, it was really feeling like no better than 50-50. And it's been an awesome thing for me. It's just on the personal side, like before Brooklyn Nine-Nine started, I didn't have kids, and it's like given me a great kind of opportunity to have time with the kids and do something that I'm really enjoying. And it's kind of it's been a definite like marker in time in my life of when I've been doing Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And then it's just a real fun show to work on. Like I crack up every time I watch. I'll watch the same scene over and over and over, and I'll be just laughing each time. There would be like the character Boyle will do something silly on screen, and it's like it's amazing how like 100 times through it, literally 100 times through it, and it still cracks me up. So that the day of the cancellation, it was definitely like, oh, but I didn't think it could really. I didn't think it would really happen. I've been telling myself it was 50-50, but I didn't think it would really go. And I was also in the process of I just bought a new house and just started construction on a new studio and all that.
Yeah.
And, so you have all those kind of concerns as well. But it's really been such a fun show to work on. I was really happy with where we ended up at the end of season 5. And that's like, if that had to have been the finale, it would have been pretty nice. It was, it really felt like, no, but we're not done. Like we're still, it's still getting better each season. It's not, we're not in that kind of just see how long we can write it out thing that some shows get into. It felt like there was more to do, but
how stoked were you when you found out that NBC picked it up?
I couldn't believe it. I was I'm sure any of the musicians listening understand that we're not at the top of the call sheet. So, I got my news both ways on Twitter. Like I had an alert set up, and so I just was in the doctor's office and saw on the phone like, oh, Brooklyn Nine-Nine canceled. It's like, oh, okay, that's it. And then the next day I was out at a restaurant with one of my best friends, just kind of going over how rough it was going to be and how bummed I was about it. And I got a call from my wife that saying, you got picked up again. It's like, just totally in shock. And it was really like, there had been some discussion of, oh, well, maybe Hulu or Netflix or something.
Yeah.
Maybe one of these other ones, a streaming service, will pick it up. And so about, later, the middle of the day after, there came word that like, no, Hulu passed, Netflix passed, and so at that point it was really like, okay, it's really done. It's, time to get on to something new. And then it popped up a few hours later, and it was so great to hear, and really like, yes, this is this is exciting to keep it going. And it honestly, the kind of the best part of that 30-hour period there was the fan reaction that we were getting, just watching Twitter or whatever, from like Guillermo del Toro, people like that, like saying they love the show. It's like, really, like, that's awesome. That's great.
People you never expect.
Yeah, it's fun to just see how many people really enjoyed the show. And it's now it's been about 9 months or so since that happened. I keep hearing people telling me how much they enjoy the show, and how it's kind of comforting, and if they're in a dark place or they're having a rough day or whatever, that it's a show that they can just watch it and enjoy it, and they will definitely smile, they will definitely laugh, and just in their day better than it had been. And from like soldiers who had been in Afghanistan to people battling depression or whatever else that people are dealing with, it like is a reliable thing to just kind of pick you up and say, hey, there are good people in the world, and there's fun to be had. So it's great to get to keep being a part of that.
Yeah. I actually just started watching that show maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago.
Yeah.
Because a friend of mine was telling me about it. He was like, yeah, it's really funny. You should watch it. So I was just scrolling through Hulu, which is kind of surprising that you're saying that Hulu wouldn't be interested in picking it up, because they actually have it on there.
Yeah.
But that's where I started watching it. And it's really funny. And, when I saw the opportunity about you coming on the podcast, I was like, oh, I actually watched this show. It's really funny.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. And it's funny. It's actually it's premiering tonight, right? The new season.
Yeah. Season 6 starts tonight, and I think it's got a pretty straight run through the spring here. Kind of every Thursday night at 9:00 on NBC
cool.
now. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. That's really
Thanks.
cool.
Yeah.
So how did you get that gig? Kind of, you were saying, since you've been kind of scoring to picture, how did you start getting on some more bigger projects like that, or even getting that gig in particular?
Yeah. Well, so I mentioned that I went to NYU, and it just so happened that basically all of my friends at NYU were NYU film students. So that's kind of how that combined with my job at the music house doing commercials, and then all my friends needing some music for their film, their short films and that, kind of first low budget features, that kind of thing. They needed music, and I knew how to write music for picture, and so it worked out. And so I kind of got hooked in. My wife she was NYU film also, and so the most straight trajectory on Brooklyn Nine-Nine was that another friend from NYU film was an editor on Modern Family, and she needed some music for a scene and called me up. And I mentioned before, but I was on Christmas break, and I was in El Paso, Texas, and I just had my laptop with me, but it was it was a piece of organ music that they needed scored to this whole long scene. So I downloaded the Soundiron organ, and bought a cheap MIDI keyboard at Guitar Center, and spent a few days over my Christmas break on a laptop with headphones writing the piece of music for her. And then she ended up editing the Brooklyn Nine-Nine pilot, and later directing a few episodes too. And she called me on to help out with the pilot, and I guess they liked what I did well enough. They hired me for the show. So that's how I got on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Obviously I had to have a few credits aside from just helping out on one thing, you know. So I assisted for a while on several TV shows, and got some experience writing and figuring out how TV works, because it's different than just writing a song or writing for, you know, like I said, I'd started in commercials, and that's, you know, if you get to write a minute-long piece of music that, you know, it's not going to be related to anything else you're doing on any other thing. But if you get to write a minute-long piece of music, like that's kind of the big one in the commercial world. So then to get into TV, where especially on the drama side, sometimes you've got, you know, 3-minute cues or something that you have to do, and you've got the workflow is just very different in that on a drama, a lot of times you'll have 20 to even 40 minutes of music in like a week that needs to be written, whereas in the commercial world it's like, you know, it's 30 seconds or a minute. Now they may want 10 versions of 30 seconds or a minute in that 3-day period or whatever, but it's just it's a very different way of just kind of getting all the music out. And I enjoyed starting to being able to work with themes and longer, you know, creating a real palette for a show that sounds like, well, that's what this is, this show, and it could kind of work for something else, but it's really for this, you know. And that was kind of fun, kind of getting into that and learning. And then through that, I got hooked up with the Alexandre Desplat and Javier Navarrete, and did some assisting for them. And that was really cool to see how just the upper echelon, the real top, the biggest kind of things, see how they do it and help out where I could. And you know, there's definitely the when you're in the presence of genius, like it's pretty inspiring just to see somebody who's that good work, you know. And it's like, man, it's inspiring and very humbling. Like, I'm not sure I'm that, but maybe I can learn a thing or two. Like, I don't have that genius, but if I can pick up a thing or two from him, great.
Yeah, try to let the genius rub off on you.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah. I saw that you did some assisting stuff for Alexandre Desplat and Javier, and Alexandre Desplat's one of my favorite composers. I never knew who he was until I heard the score for Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium.
Yeah, that's just actually the first one I worked on him with.
That's really cool. Just that main theme. It's just, I don't know, it's just something about his music sounds very just like rich and
he has such
colorful,
he has such a good melodic kind of lyrical sense, but he has that magic that you instantly know it's him, and you know it also works great for picture, you know. It's like it fits the thing, it creates a world, and you also no, it's him. There's no mistaking which composer wrote the score for that. If you listen to many scores, it's like, oh yeah, that's clearly Alec.
Yeah, I think it's because he's so passionate just about film music and music in general. Because I've seen some interviews with him, and just like the way he talks about it, he's not just like, yeah, some guy brought me some movie and I threw some big epic drums and hybrid synths and all this stuff and whatever. I hit a couple presets and I'm out. Like he just seems real deep about it. Like he really takes it seriously.
He's a real student of music and film scoring and like jazz. He just loves jazz, but you wouldn't really get his love for jazz so much in his scores. I don't think so directly, but it's there underneath, and he's a super smart guy and super talented, and the work ethic was also another thing to watch for him, because he's I assisted him when he'd be working in LA primarily. So when he'd just come off a 12-14 hour flight, whatever it is, from Paris, and immediately, it's 8 or 9 o'clock at night, immediately sit down at his keyboard and just start fully writing the parts, just go. He's ready to go, and he does it himself. Like he's really he has a team of people to help on the final production end of things, but as far as the writing, it really is him doing the writing. And
he orchestrates everything too, right?
Yeah, I think he has,
or most of, maybe like more orchestrating than most.
Yeah, I would say he has orchestrators who help him out and kind of work on the parts, and I think that's basically it, is kind of write out the parts from but it's pretty well done when he's done. Although, as a sample creator, it's interesting, everybody kind of has their go-to sounds, and it's like when you get to know your go-to sounds, like, it's great to have a new inspiring sound to work with, and sometimes you need that on a new project or something, especially, or to kind of breathe new life into something. But for the majority of the time I was working with him, he still used Roland string samples for all his writing, and he can make those Roland string sounds like off of S760, I think he was using. Like, he can make those sound amazing. Like, they sound, when you listen to them on their own, they don't sound like anything, but when you know your tools so well that and you're so comfortable writing in, that the MIDI mock-ups, even with samples that at that time were 20 years old or whatever, you can really make something amazing out of it.
I definitely agree. I think there's a lot of people nowadays that they have that sort of, they get something new and they're like, or they see some commercial like for this new product and like, oh, that's what I need. And then they get it and they spend like 20 minutes with it and they're like, well, it's not really quite what I expected, like right out of the box.
Yeah.
But you have to learn how it works. That's the thing. Not everything is, Yeah. You can't play a PlayStation controller like an Xbox. You got to learn how the other thing works, and then you'll be able to, beat every level on the game versus like, oh, it's just not working, done,
Yeah. It's definitely, I do kind of hoard my sample libraries, and I grab a bunch at a time, and then I just kind of try and figure them out when I have time or a need for it. I'll find something that inspires me, but when I need to write something quickly, it's like I definitely have my go-tos of like, like for piano, I mentioned before, but your emotional piano library for I'm not a great piano player, like I can get by, but for the way I play piano and what I use piano for in my music, it's so forgiving for me, kind of, that's like, I can make something sound good on that. I also have a Wurlitzer in the studio that I use that's very forgiving also, that that it's like I can make something that sounds beautiful, that I get inspired about the music instead of being like, oh, but it doesn't look like just that one, so I have probably 20 other piano libraries that supposedly sound amazing, and maybe I'll try and move them over, but if it's been written on the emotional piano one, then I'll keep it on there. Like, it's going to end up better with that. But I guess for me with the piano especially, it's like, if I'm going to write something for piano, it's probably going to be a pretty gentle piece of music.
Yeah.
And just because that's kind of the palette I use. Obviously, the piano can do a lot, but for me, it gets too distracting because I don't have the piano technique to really control some of the other ones that can really get loud and aggressive. It's really nice for me to just be able to sit and not think about like my piano technique while I'm trying to write this piece of music, and really just think about the notes and where I want to go with it and how it's feeling to me. But
I think everything from just like the feel of like when your finger hits a key and you hear a sound and how that sound sort of resonates with you. There's definitely something there. It's important. It's not a matter of let's say having the best or whatever, you think is the best. Like just having something that it's like having an acoustic guitar that just when you strum a chord and the way it just kind of vibrates.
Yeah.
You can't really explain why you connect with it or why you're just like, man, this guitar, like, I don't know what it is. It's just some whatever acoustic guitar. But, I think immediately if you hit a key and you hear a sound and it triggers something, that usually leads to inspiration or new creative ideas, just because it's a very natural feel, not like I need to make this big I don't know, string section or whatever. You just kind of like, and even then you can write that on a piano and then arrange it for different instrument sections or whatever. But I think that's great. That's awesome to hear.
It's definitely it's great to have the tools that you can you can just instantly kind of make that connection with and get moving on the writing part of it. But because I could sort through all the other samples for hours and not, I'm easily distracted maybe.
Yeah. So you were talking a little bit earlier about that you're redoing your studio and kind of like getting it all redone. I wanted to ask, what are some of the reasons? Was there any certain reasons why you're doing that, or what are you trying to do with your new setup as far as the new studio room?
I mean the main reason is my family moved across town, so I need a place to work. But I had my list of gripes with my old place of how I wanted to have it set up, that I'm trying to make sure I get all those taken care of. And one of the main ones is I wanted a good room for recording drums and having my guitars mic'd up, having the amps mic'd up so that I can get real sounds, but everything has to be ready to go. That's the if I have to take down half the studio to set up a drum set to make it work, then it's like it's just not going to happen because the pace that things have to happen at. So these things snowball. It literally started with me thinking, well, for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like it would be helpful if I just had a hat set up, just a hi-hat set up with a mic right beside my spot where I'm working, so that I can do the hi-hat patterns, because I use a lot of hi-hat in it, so it's like, and I can get the kind of ends of notes exactly how I want them, or if I want a little kind of swish on the end of something, that I can just record it, because as much as I've kind of familiarized myself with different sample libraries, and there are kind of too many sometimes to get. That's the one I want, for just to get the timing just right to hit a joke or I mean, I'm not trying to nail jokes, but just to get in and out in the right spot. It's the kind of thing that I was finding that it would be ideal to just have it a little, just where I could play it live and quickly and move on. But then it was like, well, if I'm gonna do that, I could use a ride, and then I could use a snare, and I do some stuff with the tom.
I really do need a kick drum. Just saying.
So it got to be where, okay, I just need a drum kit, and I need it set up to where I can, have the control, walk in the room, play what I need to play, and come up. And I, same with the guitars. I started, on the Pilot. I think my guitars were all kind of in the box directly, and then it's kind of grown to where now it has to be really recorded, which it should be,
I think certain instruments, I mean, there's some really good drum libraries out there.
Yeah.
But I feel like with guitar, you're never, I think it's way harder to get. I mean, you can get close.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, and actually, one of on the sound of the show, like what really inspired the show's got a lot of, it's very bass driven, that's kind of my choice of sound for this police show. And I had a sample library of a muted Rickenbacker bass, and that really kind of drove like, okay, that's cool, like that's the sound, like that's kind of got the right retro feel to it, but also fits in that kind of 80s hip hop vibe too that I was kind of aiming for. And so while the sample library kind of inspired, like, okay, that helped me find like this is the sound, but of course then 10 episodes in, or when I went out and bought a Rickenbacker bass and set it up to be muted all the time, so I've got my go-to bass there, because it just it feels better to just play it now. But
and I think for that vibe, like you were saying, it makes sense to have more real instruments, because you can program it, but something like that, I think to really get that extra feel across, you're gonna need some real people behind there.
And the people recording the guitars live, I know stuff's getting better and better. It just feels like there's just that extra layer of thick, like, vibration to it that I can feel when I'm listening, that I think on the direct guitar stuff that I had been using mainly, you get such a wide range and all the effects and everything just at a click of a button. But I think I have a tendency, especially having not played in bars and clubs and had played with an amp on full blast for years and years and years, it's too easy to get to stray away from what a guitar should really sound like when you have all the effects in the box. Like it can start to sound like just some synth thing or a keyboard part or something like that, where it doesn't feel like it's really pushing the air in the room that I've tried to get back to. but definitely drums and stuff like the drums, because I'm going for that, as one aspect of the sound is that 80s kind of hip hop vibe, is sampled drums is huge for that. So it makes more sense to be using sampled drums than a live drummer for the majority of that stuff. And then my drum set wishes are more for scoring. A lot of times the action scenes will need something a little bit more live and energetic feeling, but
that's cool. Do you mix all your own stuff?
Yeah, I do. I mean, like the theme song, I had help mixing that, just to make sure, since that's going to be playing over and over. But I mix everything for the show, and I've I have the backstop of it's going to go to a mix, and they know the stuff, and it's pretty simple music. Like, there's not a ton of layers in the show. Other things I've worked on have had, so many layers. And since I'm trying to use very real sounds and not too many layers of them, it's pretty straightforward to mix. And I've kind of developed a system where I can kind of cross-check between Pro Tools, which I write in Logic, and then I put everything in. I stem everything out of Logic and put it in Pro Tools, and work in Pro Tools at essentially what a level that's much closer to what you would hear on TV. And I kind of have a little mini mix set up in Pro Tools so that I can hear how it translates and make choices. And when I'm working in Logic, it's too tempting to keep turning the music side of it up and up as I'm writing, because I'm trying to feel the music as I'm doing it, and then, things like a cymbal or something like that sounds like, oh, well, that's plenty loud when I'm listening to the full music, that then when you duck it way down, which is what's going to end up like on TV, that kind of thing can get totally lost, or if it's the right frequency, it'll be like, oh, that's all I'm hearing. So I kind of do a 2-pass mix on things. I do more of a mix in Logic, and then go into Pro Tools and try and tweak and make sure everything's sitting with the dialogue and everything just right.
Mm-hmm. Why do you prefer mixing in Pro Tools versus Logic?
It's probably just in my head, but it sounds different to me. I think it's probably what I'm talking about with the levels of the dialogue and the effects and everything like that. I feel like, and also with the synths and the plugin layers and everything like that, I kind of like to get then back to just audio, and then I can just be tweaking it, because I feel like there's a certain lag and a little bit of a variation that I'm feeling, at least when I'm working in Logic, which I love Logic for writing. Like it works really well, but I feel like when I get into the mix side of it, I prefer to have it simplified down to my 10 stems that I stem out of Logic to work with, instead of having all the little parts that are here and here and this sampler, and did I forget to turn down that? And in Pro Tools, if I just need it's mostly volume adjustments in Pro Tools, and sometimes it's like, oh no, that could use a little something on the EQ or a compressor or something, but mostly what I use it for is volume adjustments. And if it's like, well, that one note is sticking out weird with that line of dialogue, then I can just cut that note and I'll do a clip gain and drop it down so that it's not interfering with the dialogue, and also just in writing for picture, I'm not sure how much you've ever worked to picture, but a lot of times there are accidents that make things really great as far as the sync. So you'll be working on something for hours and be like, okay, I think I've got it all right, and then you hit a button, you drop in a new cut, and it's like, oh, this is totally different, but it's like, oh, but that works so well there, and
yeah,
things shift around. In my assisting days, there was many times where I'd go in and look at something somebody else was working on and just be like, well, what if it was like a beat and a half later? Like, then wouldn't that kind of line up? And then that, and you put it there, and it's like, yeah, that is way better. Like, how did that happen? It's just kind of, I'm sure anybody who's spent a lot of time writing to picture has had that happen many times for them, where it's like, yeah. I was doing this so specifically for every little thing, and then you move it and it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it is better. So it gives me that chance to say, in Logic, with all the parts and all the plugins and automations and stuff like that I may have going on, if I want to just see what it's like a few frames off, or what if it's over here, what if I just make sure I line up that point exactly right, then it feels like there's so many, it's a big ship to right, if you're just going to move things a little bit here or try something, or what if I just move this whole section over here. I basically play music editor before I send it off to the real music editors to work on. Like I do a pass of just double checking myself, both on the composition side, but mostly on the mix side in Pro Tools. And it just gives me, I force myself to make sure I'm listening to it as it's going to be on TV, because it's too easy to get real excited about something when you have, my music bus at, all the way up at 0, and the dialogue's just playing along. Like, it's like, yeah, no, I know what they're saying. I don't care about that. I want to
get into the music.
Yeah. It's too easy to do that, and then when you see it on TV, it doesn't translate at all, because they just turned it all down because it was interfering with the joke, and that's the that's the big lesson from writing for comedy now for the last 5-6 years, is don't ever get in the way of a joke, because it won't ever. if you're stepping anywhere near a joke, just back off, and the little quarter of a frame here, even this way or that way, can really make a difference on how funny something is. Like like I was mentioning how you just bump something one way or another, there have been things where I'm like, I know this piece of music feels right for this, and I know I'm getting pretty close to what it should be, but the scene's just not really like it's not making me laugh. It's not like, I've seen it several times, but I don't know. I don't love this scene. And then I'll say, well, okay, what if I just try and line that part up, and I move everything over, and then it's like, you play it down, and it, after watching it, 40 times or whatever, suddenly it makes me laugh. That it's like, oh, well, that's really both frustrating and really nice to be able to just try things out like that,
Yeah, that's a good tip. So
yeah.
It's like, if you're ever hating your music, don't throw it away. Just move it around a little bit.
Yeah,
nudge it forward and backward.
Sometimes it really makes a difference. Sometimes it really, if you feel like, yeah, no, this is the right feel, like it's the move, it's there. It's just like, why is that line that's supposed to be funny not funny? And really nudging it a bit here and there can make a big difference in it being like, okay, now that's landing, because there's definitely a similarity in music and comedy of just setting up an expectation and then delivering in a slightly unexpected way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's pretty easy to get going and just be like, okay, well, the music's working here and the scene's funny and it feels about right. But there's sometimes when you can hit that moment of lining up the expectation moment in the comedy and the music just right, and hitting the resolution in the same way, you can really bump it up a couple notches, make it really fun for the audience.
Coming from the commercial background and then doing a comedy, like a TV comedy like that, did you find anything sort of difficult as far as trying not to be maybe too like a considered like cliche or that sort of thing, or like kind of
yeah, I mean, no, I did have a little bit of a break where I was doing mostly TV drama between the commercial stuff and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but the truth is, nobody wants a sitcom composer right now, at least. Like nobody wants their sitcom to sound like a sitcom, and that's, I have never been in a meeting or an interview or anything where anybody said like, this just needs to feel like a sitcom. Like that's the last thing people want right now. And it's not at all what I aim to deliver. There are definitely things that when you get in and it's like, well, okay, we need to punch it up towards the end of this act where you need to be building and you've got 4 seconds to build. It's like, it takes a lot of effort to not make it sound sitcom-y, because I tend to approach things pretty melodically to begin with. And I think when you get melody in a 3 or 4 second little cue, it's almost impossible to not make it sound like a sitcom.
Yeah.
So, it's just anything.
Every
you
Family
do.
Matters episode, every Full House episode.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's definitely something. It's like, I'm sure I've gone over the line a few times on the show, but it's definitely something I try to avoid. It's if we hear, and we're spotting and listening to something in the in temp, and it's like, that sounds too sitcom. It's like, take it out of the library, like get it out of there. We don't want that. That's not what we're going for. Definitely the goal on the show to begin with was that I'm going to play more of the action and the police, not drama, but the police storyline is more what I'm here for. And the producers of the show did The Office and Parks and Rec, super funny shows. And
I love The Office. I've seen that show I don't know how many times.
But they don't have any music in either of those shows. Like they have the theme song and then there's no score. So
that's true.
They came at it from we don't need music to help our audience know that it's funny. And I fully agree. Like, you don't. And so that's never been my job on the show, is to like, if there's ever anything that's like, is the music making it a joke? Like, is the music should never be part of the joke for the show, basically. The music just helps support the jokes and gets out of the way if it helps to make them funnier. But yeah, it's a constant thing I'm working on to make sure that I can get in and out quickly when I need to, and give it the ramp it needs, give it the punch it needs to keep that rhythm going, without it feeling like, oh yeah, I'm watching a sitcom. That's what this is.
Yeah. I feel like serious music for that show could even make it funny too. Just like if there's some scene where like Peralta's being an idiot or something, and you just hear like a like some like heavy like arpeggiated synth, it makes it funny because you're like, I can't take this guy serious, but then like the music seems all intense, but you know it's just gonna be like a big failure or something dumb.
My general rule of thumb it took me a few years to realize this, when I would come up with like, is this too much, or is this how should I play this? Like, is this funny, or is this like, no, they think they're being really cool, is basically to be in Peralta's head. So whatever even if he's not, I mean, he's usually in the scenes with the big, because he's usually in the A stories, but even if he's not in it, it's, how does he feel about what's happening right now? Does he think he's never looked cooler, and so the music should be as cool as it can be? Or is he actually concerned for what's happening, about what's happening right now, or is he just having fun? Then that's kind of, if I'm ever questioning which way to go with it, that's kind of the lead that I take.
Yeah, I was watching the trailer for the first episode of the newest season. Did you do the music for that too? Or?
No, not for the trailer. I think it was NBC's promo department.
Oh, okay.
Took it. But they quoted the theme song in it. I thought it was really fun.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
They should.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was funny how when he's like jumping off the roof and they just try to make it like this big long epic thing.
Yeah.
Like, he would never catch it. He's like 50 feet away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was funny. It had this like big epic thing, and then it turns into just a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. They did a good job with it. And yeah, NBC's done a great job kind of getting the promos and like really kind of getting the style of the show for that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to see how we do on NBC, and hope people tune in.
I think they will, and I think it'll do good. I think you're in good hands.
Yeah, feels like.
So how is it doing something like goofy like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and then doing something like demonic? Like how has that changed for you? Like do you really like sort of like the total shift in gears, or are you more of a fan of horror?
I've really enjoyed doing the comedy. It's definitely, I think now I've been doing comedy for a while, so I would enjoy doing something else too, to kind of break it up. I actually did demonic first season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, kind of right alongside each other, so that was a little bit of a crazy just turn one side off, turn the other on. But that was definitely one of those pressure and deadlines make cool things happen. It's fun, to me. I think I work so much off the picture that it's really not hard to shift gears when I'm looking at something that's like, oh, this is, this is what it is. So clearly different from the other thing that I can't say that I really found it difficult to be switching back and forth, and it's kind of refreshing to have something else to go to, so you don't just kind of get in a feedback loop on the same things that you're doing, because every now as different as they are, there's a again, there's setups and a build up of tension and a release of tension in one way or another. So I think you can actually still learn something about doing one from doing the other.
Yeah. How did you approach the score for that movie? Being that I think horror's one of those. It's one of those genres that it's real easy to just say I'm gonna score a horror movie, but then you have to be careful of not just doing the same things that have been done in every horror movie. How did you find, the challenge of trying to find the tone for something like a demonic horror movie?
Yeah, well, so demonic. It's the film kind of has two sides to it. Like it's a little bit of an investigative police drama, and then a little bit of a straight haunted house kind of horror film. Like it's kind of got both sides going for it. So the police part of it was pretty straightforward for me. I knew that from my other stuff that I kind of had an idea of what sounds work for that, and keeping it a little bit more on the creepy side, that there's always some lingering tension than I would have on a TV police show. But the horror side of it is the first horror film I had done, so it was definitely a learning thing for me. A lot of modern horror is very just tonal and effects driven, and you hear a lot of that kind of stuff. Because the haunted house was such a classic haunted house kind of story, I tried to go a little more old school and more melodic with the sound of it, which may or may not have worked, but it was fun to write. But I think probably the most effective scary scenes are the ones where the tonal stuff does take over, and the melodic stuff is more where it's in your head about what may or may not be happening, and then when there's jumps and scares and that kind of stuff happening, keeping it much more tonal and just finding the right sounds for that helped to really give it a sound and keep people interested, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. I was watching the trailer for Boys of Abu Ghraib.
Yeah,
that looks really good.
Yeah,
that looks like a really interesting story, and the piece of music that you showed me, it sounded really good. And then when I saw the trailer, I was like, man, this seems pretty intense.
Yeah, it was a cool film. It's a very this obviously the prison of Abu Ghraib, but it's a very kind of smaller story in that setting of really one soldier's kind of journey and what he's doing, and his kind of interaction with a prisoner there. But yeah, it was really well done and fun to write for. That I was mostly kind of guitar based, and but yeah, like I mentioned with the emotional piano, the central kind of theme of that one, I definitely broke out the emotional piano sample for, and went for his everything with his relationship with his girlfriend back at home, and his kind of missing home is based on that theme that was initially just written on that emotional piano one. And really, I think there's like an ambience and that sample, and that was really like, okay, that's all this needs. It doesn't need all the rest of it that you can kind of clop on top of things. But
that's awesome. That's really cool. It's always nice when the sound of something ends up being really simplistic instead of thinking of just layering and layering, which it's easy to do, but I think it's kind of like when you watch like Alan Silvestri's like Forrest Gump score or something. It's just a little simple piano and kind of not like super simple like three notes or something, but just a very just one instrument, very just
I definitely, there's definitely power in keeping things simple. I think it's you have all these tools and all these things, but when you can find the right one to get your message straight through, it's like the fewer the better. But you got to have the right one to do it with. That's the trick.
I could see how sometimes that would be kind of a bummer for people, because you think like, all right, I'm going to do this new project. Like, I want to bust out all my guitar pedals. I want to take out all my synths and just like make these crazy sound chains and, try to create some completely new sound for something. But then it ends up just being, 4 notes on a piano. You're like,
yeah. Well, yeah,
easy,
but if your complex sound chain gives you that the sound that cuts through and is like, yes, that identifies this work, then go for it. But it definitely, I find that the more I kind of layer on top of things and layer and like, okay, this is getting where it just tends to sound more homogenized, and it doesn't allow something to really kind of cut through and reach the viewer, because we're especially like on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it's dialogue wall to wall. So there's I think there was one episode where I watched it on TV, and there was like a decent like 25-second chunk where it was just music. There was no dialogue because they were texting on screen instead. And I was like, man, I should have paid more attention. I could have really done something there, because I'm so used to just trying to stay a little bit out of the way. But it's like, the point of that being that you really do have to stay out of the way. So if you can find the one thing that really can cut through, in a way that's not distracting, obviously, but if you can find the thing that the audience can latch on to, I think that's definitely the trick. Like I like to think of myself as being a much more minimalist composer, and just creatively think of everything as a much more minimal kind of attitude. But I definitely catch myself layering, and then I'm like, okay, just if you're having to double and triple everything, was it the right sound to begin with, or do you need to just go back and find the sound that's right true. One?
That's like the same exact approach when it comes to mixing itself. Like, you get these guys with like 10 plugins on their chain, and then you take it off and it sounds better than it did with 3 EQs, 2 compressors, a limiter, and like, what are you doing? Like, 4 reverbs. Like, I needed 4 reverbs to get the exact sound that I needed. Like, no, you didn't. You probably could like use a little looking. EQ, a touch of compression, like throw it in a room or something in the reverb, and you're good. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. That's definitely something I'm learning along the way. Is if that along the same lines. The other thing is, if I'm my other kind of check to make sure things are good, because I basically I write the music on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I write the music and I send it to the mix, and at the mix, if they want to tweak something, they can. Over the series, there's maybe been a handful of cues that they've just said, nah, I don't think we need music there. And sometimes I'll write something knowing you probably don't need music, but I'll just give you something in case you want it. But my only check, besides just the Logic to Pro Tools and listening and coming back and listening again, is I'll play it for my wife, who's a producer on a TV producer as well. But I'll play something for my wife, and just if whatever I'm nervous about playing her, or whatever I'm like, I don't know about this, like, what do you think about that? It's like, you should just change it, because it's not right. It's not right. You should just change it. Not, don't try and, but that act of playing it for someone else allows me to really say, no, I don't, like, I have a problem with that. I'm sure, like, I've been doing this long enough. I know that there's probably something wrong with it. So I just got to go back to the drawing board. And, sometimes it's like, but then I got to fire up the amp again. And then it's like, where was that setting? It's a little bit of a pain to go back and be like, all right. But there's definitely learning that, like, no, I can find something a single thing that nails it better than trying to say, well, what if I just added this on top, or a little cymbal thing here, or maybe that would ease it through, and make it pass. But
it's funny how that is when you put someone in the room and you're like, hey, you want to listen to what I've been working on? Because I've done that with my girlfriend. I would be writing some music, and I'm like, hey, you want to come check it out? Just kind of get someone else's opinion. And as soon as I hit play and let's say the second part of the whatever I was working on starts playing, and it's like you're almost listening to it from outside of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like you can hear where it's bad, but before you're not really thinking about it, and then you're like, and you almost want to just hit stop, no, just come back. Come back.
Yeah. So let me change these 3 things and then I'll play it for you again. But yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. It's like this weird psychological thing, because I've always been that way. You have that moment where you're really stoked on something, and then you play it for someone, and you're just you just, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's what's hating it or
what's surprising me is I feel like I usually know it when I'm as I'm playing it for someone else. I know the parts that I'm concerned about, and it's in the writing process, learning to trust that you're concerned about it for a reason. You should change it. You can find something better than that. Learning that go ahead and trust that instinct and make the move, as opposed to just saying, maybe I can eke this out. Maybe I can do something else. Maybe another reverb will fix it.
Probably will.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me, and like I was saying, congratulations on Brooklyn Nine-Nine coming back.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
And exciting.
Thanks for having me on.
I know I need to catch up. I still have some more episodes to watch before I get to where they are now. But it's funny enough that I'm gonna keep watching.
Yeah, appreciate it.
But thanks again, and good luck on everything else.
Oh yeah, thanks. Same to you.
If you want to stay more up to date on any of our Soundiron podcasts when we release them, make sure to find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and SoundCloud. As well as go back and listen to any of our other previously recorded Soundiron podcasts with some really awesome and creative artists. So until next time, I want to thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast.